Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Have you ever felt lost in a relationship, unsure of where you stand or even who you are? If so, you're not alone. I've been there, and so has my guest. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Soul CPR. You know, in just about a month from now, I will celebrate my 62nd birthday, and I recognize it as a milestone that reflects a journey from heartbreak to wholeness, and probably one from unwellness to wellness as well. And one thing that I've learned throughout the years, and something that I find remains universal, is that relationships, whether toxic or nurturing, offer valuable lessons. And along the way, my relationships have been debilitating and rewarding, and probably run the gamut of everything in between. But regardless of the nature of each and every one, it was up to me to notice the lesson and to learn and grow from each of those so that I could build a healthy and secure relationship with the one person that I would always be with. And that is with myself, of course. And I've noticed also that toxic relationships in particular often follow familiar repetitive patterns, and the pain that they bring is inevitable. People will disappoint and betray us and struggle to love us in the way that we deserve. But I also learned that suffering is optional, if you will. And that part's on us, and that the greatest lesson of all is in letting go. And it's more than just letting go of the person. And that's really where our work begins, is learning what it is that we need to let go of. That is the work ahead of us. And I believe that begins a journey of really getting to first know ourselves, and then choosing to always stay true to ourselves, and then really, really learning to love ourselves. And I think there's a struggle that many of us have with that. But when we do these things, healing happens. Now, while my guest today is much younger, I believe it's our shared life experiences and our passion for serving others that bridges that age gap and unites us. So my guest today, Bree Wolta, is an EFT and the clearing work practitioner, and she is a relationship clarity coach, passionate about helping women heal from the mind games of toxic relationships so that they can securely attach and finally experience healthy love. Bree's own toxic relationship healing journey and her ability to hold safe space allows her to walk alongside clients as they find clarity and build trust from within, rekindling the most important relationship of all, the one they have with themselves. Bree, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I know I've been eagerly awaiting this date because we said it quite a while ago, but I'm so happy that you're here and joining me for this discussion. But there's so much I want to talk to you about, but let's start by giving the audience a little background on that toxic relationship. When did you first recognize with your past partner that relationship was actually toxic?
When I was in that relationship, I didn't really have an understanding of what toxic relationships were. I didn't have the vocabulary around narcissism. It was more, for me, a very confusing experience of having started this relationship feeling so euphoric. It was perfect. He was perfect. You know, the soulmate, the riding in on his white horse, like this man that I never thought existed in the way
Yeah.
that he pursued me, in the gifts that he gave me, in the experiences that we had, in just the amount of attention that he showered me with in the beginning. It
Yeah.
felt really good. And I didn't know that it was too good to be true at that point in time. I was just like, this is what I've been missing. Awesome. And so
Right.
to go from that experience of feeling desired and wanted and seen and communicated with, to then starting to feel a lot of anxiety in the relationship and a lot of confusion around what was going wrong and why we were fighting so much and why we couldn't come to any sort of resolve after fighting, was really where I just started questioning the relationship and questioning what was happening. And it took me a while to get to the place of actually seeing the red flags and not staying in self blame, because I took on the responsibility of the entire relationship and needing to fix it. And
Right.
so that journey for me was a long one.
Hmm. And that taking on responsibility and need to fix, is there an origin story behind that?
Yeah.
Perhaps it
Oh, of
tends to be
course.
for most of us. Where did that come from?
Yeah, this relationship really was the perfect storm for me, because I came into it with specific patterns that I have had since childhood, right? I grew up in a family where I had a caretaking role, and taking care of my mother. She went through several health issues when I was younger. I had a family member who struggled with addiction. And so I took on that rescuer role, right? At 4 years old, I started up like, I'm going to hold the family together. So
Goodness.
I had ingrained understandings around responsibility and that everyone else's needs get put before mine. And I didn't know what boundaries were. I was very codependent. I was very consumed with other people and them being okay in order for me to be okay. So
Yeah.
I was coming into this relationship really primed to find somebody who could take advantage of those traits and who could take advantage of my empathy and my lack of boundaries. And unfortunately, those unhealed traits of mine made me very malleable, which is very appealing to somebody who wants control. And
Yeah.
so it was the puzzle piece that fit in. I allowed a lot of things to happen in terms of not standing up for myself, not feeling confident, not feeling worthy. He took advantage of a lot of those places by being manipulative and using gaslighting and further chipping away my self-esteem.
Yeah. I think that is, and I'm going to say we're speaking specifically about women today, but this happens to men too, as the victims of narcissistic abuse, if you will. But I think it's every woman's story, if you will, that comes from some kind of background of being the fixer, the pleaser, the hold it together in the family, whatever it may be. So there had been toxic relationships in your life before, if not for no other reason than the burden that had been placed on you at such a young age. I mean, 4 years old, my goodness. So you really had carried in this pattern. So when things started so beautifully, I'm sure you just leaned in and melted into this relationship. So
Yeah.
you use the word confusing, and I know because I'm a clean rated show, we can't use the word you use, but you don't call it mind games, you call it a mind F, and we all know what that means. So talk to us a little bit about when it turns confusing, when there is a manipulator, controller person, what does that look like, sound like in a relationship?
That's a great question. The term gaslighting has become popularized now. And just like a lot of popularized terms, some people use it the correct way and some people use it the not correct way. So when we think about gaslighting, it's really somebody intentionally trying to skew your version of reality, trying to tell you something different than what you feel, think, or believe. And so where I started to feel this confusion was in conversations. where we were trying to talk about, I was trying to bring something to the table that I was upset about. And I would leave that conversation thinking everything was my fault. And there was no actual talk around the thing that I was upset about. So I would bring up something that I was upset about, and he would say something to the tune of, "We wouldn't have so many problems if you didn't bring problems to the table. And why can't you just be happy with what you have? And I'm really trying here. Can't you see?" And there were enough little pieces of truth in those statements to get me to start to question if he was right. Oh, am I bringing too much up? Am I making things bigger than they need to be? Should I just be grateful that he's trying as best he can? And so that's where gaslighting really becomes insidious, is because they're not like these far out lies that they're trying to make you believe. They really
Mhm.
are, they play on your weaknesses, and they're rooted in some amount of truth. Because I did have a tendency to make things big because I couldn't find resolve around them. And
Right.
so he just knew the exact buttons to push. And when you leave conversations feeling more confused than clear and feeling like everything is your fault all of the time, you really lose your motivation to try to continue to have conversations with that person. And
Yeah.
there's almost like a self resignation that happens that is also very confusing, because you think about a partnership and you should be able to communicate in the partnership. But to
Sure.
me, I had just sort of written it off as relationships are hard. This is just part of our dynamic. This is just going to be hard for us forever. And I need to do more work on myself so that I can show up differently and not need so much from him.
Wow. I imagine that listeners are just nodding their heads, going, "Oh my God, somebody has experienced what I experienced." And yes, and me too. This is a whole me too thing. So gaslighting is so confusion is the big thing. It is so confusing when your reality you're being told is not. I used to say that my ex could tell me that the wall behind me was green and white striped with pink polka dots, and I'm like, it's not. It is. What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? You can't see it. And I would, and eventually he convinced me there's something wrong with me that I can't see the green stripes and the pink polka dots. And it was just that. And I think insidious is a great word to describe that as well. And I would leave feeling like something was wrong with me from a conversation or an experience that mine was not the same as his, and I would be either laughed at or put down, or maybe you need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
There was something wrong with me. So you do lose sense of self. You do lose self resignation. You said, I think that's amazing. I think it leads to self betrayal as well.
Oh yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, we then start to gaslight ourselves, right? We start
Yeah.
to second guess what we know to be true, what our intuition is trying to tell us about what's happening in the relationship. And
Mhm.
it's like a tornado. We just get spun up. A lot of people use the term like being in the fog, and that's
Mhm.
really what it feels like, is you can't make sense of things. You can't see in front of you, you can't see behind you, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. And it turns into real survival state living, where you're just in that sympathetic nervous system, just trying to not do the wrong thing or trying to fix the thing in a panic because you need it to be okay. And when we're
Yeah.
living in those heightened nervous system states, that's really bad for for our mental health and our physical health.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what was the turning point for you that allowed you to be able to make the decision to leave the relationship and begin a journey to wholeness?
Yeah. Like many women can relate, there were several attempts. There was some, let's take a break. Let's try to actually be broken up while living in the same house. I'll stay on the top floor, you stay on the bottom floor. There
Mhm.
was there was some negotiation that happened within myself before I felt finally ready to say, this is not working. And that, I think, is so common because a lot of us come into these relationships with loyalty. We have fallen in love with this person at some level and have committed ourselves to figuring it out, of trying everything that we can before we call something off, before we leave a relationship. And there can be a lot of fears wrapped in that too. But I remember one specific conversation with my therapist that like planted that first seed that, when you recognize something you can't unsee, it's like, I can't go backwards from here.
Right.
She had asked me what I liked about my partner right now. And I started listing all of the things that we used to do. And I started listing all of the things that were going to happen when he started going to therapy, when then we could go to couples therapy, when then we learned how to communicate. And she was like, you're telling me about your nostalgic past and you're holding on to the hope of something coming in the future. But what do you like about him right now? And I went silent.
Wow.
For like, it seemed like an hour. I'm sure it was only a few seconds, but I was like, I don't know, nothing. And that was a real eye opener for me because that was the moment where I'm like, why am I in a relationship that isn't working right now? It used to work and I'm hoping it'll work, but we've been in this middle space of fighting and arguing and not liking each other and the silent treatments and all the things for several months with no resolve and no action towards resolve. And so that was the first like specific seed that planted, I think, where I'm like, I need to really figure this out. I need to either get out or try the one last thing that's going to finally get me there.
Yeah. And I imagine it feels like a sense of failure when you feel responsible for fixing a relationship or keeping the family together as you did as a 4-year-old. Here you're carrying that pattern forward. So it's giving up on yourself somehow to give up on the relationship. So there's a lot of work to do inside on that. And I know I carried that as well. So, but you got there and your
Got there.
journey, you got there. And was it a difficult breakup? How did he respond or
Yes.
react?
Yes. I can look back now and have a lot of gratitude for the way that it unfolded, even though it was tremendously painful in the moment to experience what I experienced, because he showed me his true colors in the events leading up to the actual breakup, and then definitely more so in the post separation abuse that I endured afterward. And so there were a couple of things that like you just can't justify away, right? Things he would say, he wouldn't show up at home, he would just disappear for days at a time. And we're in a 4-year committed relationship. Like you can't just not do that, right? So it got to the point where I finally got the courage after a whole day of being on the phone with 2 different girlfriends, being like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to call him right now. This is going to be the end. And then I would call the other girlfriend and be like, I can't do it. Talk me into it again. I'm so afraid. And I did that for like literally a whole work day for 8 hours until finally I got on the phone with him and he said something that just put me over the edge. I'm like, it's done. We're done. Don't come back. And it was after that that the real narcissistic abuse, the post separation, and there was a lot of harassment, intimidation, had to file a restraining order, had to move houses. It got really, that summer was very ugly and very intense for me moving through the fire of what that was.
Wow. It is time for our first break. And when we come back, we're going to pick it up there with Bree. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Thank you for joining us today on Bold Brave TV. I'm Ann Papayotti with my guest Bree Wolta, and we are discussing journeys from heartbreak to wholeness. And Bree was just sharing with us a bit about her leaving her narcissistic abusive relationship, and that's when some intimidating behaviors began. So tell us a little more about that and the importance of having a support system.
Yeah. I really believe that when we have been so spun up in a narcissistic relationship, when we're in that fog, we can't see. So we need someone from the outside to help guide us out of that fog and to help us understand what reality is, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, where our part is in things, what's not our responsibility. These are things that honestly, in the very acute stages of the beginning of healing, we can't figure out on our own because we have been manipulated and we have been under all of these belief systems that are untrue. So the first support system that I needed was the 2 girlfriends that were on the phone with me off and on all day to remind me of what I wanted, to remind me of the amount of pain that I was in. And one of them told me, she was like, you're in 2 situations. You have a decision to make. Either you stay in long-term pain or you go through short-term pain knowing that healing and relief is on the other side. And when she framed it that way, I was like, so either way I'm in pain. One is going to take is going to be for sure forever. The other one, there's an end to. And that's what really helped me finally say the words to my ex and say, this is over.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, I needed support with people that understood the gravity of what I had just gone through. So I had a wonderful therapist, thank goodness. I had a wonderful close group of friends, and I intentionally kept that really small. There was like 3 friends who knew what was going on. My family knew what was going on, but I wasn't giving everybody updates about everything because I was in an acute place of trying to find safety, trying to move houses and just navigate all of the emotions on top of all of that. So
That's right.
having people who can understand, even if they can't, even if they haven't been specifically in that situation, if they are emotionally mature enough to be able to hold the space for you to say, I don't know what's happening. I don't know why I miss him right now. and not come at you with, oh my God, are you going to get back together? What's wrong with you? Can't you see all the things that he did to you? That's not helpful to people listening who might have loved ones who are going through this. They just
Mhm.
held space. They held space for whatever emotion I was feeling, whatever I needed to talk through. And they created a lot of safety in places that I had not felt safety in a long time. Because each
That's
time in that relationship, when I tried to share my experience or my feelings or my needs, it got shut down. I got punished for it. I got reprimanded. I was told I was wrong. So to start to re-experience what that was like with new people or with friends in a new experience was
Mhm.
really, really healing.
Yeah. I love that because that's such great advice to say, just hold space if you know someone or you're the one going through it and someone asks what you need, just that holding space because someone intentions may be wonderful and they want to protect you and 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 maybe they want to go fight for you in some way or they don't see the bad. They were charmed by him or her as well. And they're questioning it and they don't understand. But a lot of times that confusion, we may still love this person even though we know that the relationship was toxic and bad for us. And so there's a grieving process happening while we're also trying to escape what we've determined is unhealthy or dangerous for us. So there's a lot going on. So that support system, having an exit plan, because a lot of time, if a narcissist doesn't choose to end the relationship, they don't let the relationship end is one of those patterns I was mentioning at the opening of the show. So there's often that behavior. Sometimes it's hoovering. They go back, they come back with love bombing again and try to pull you back in. And that's why some people go through the multiple times trying to break it off. But sometimes it's going to be or become this more toxic behavior and pretty extreme in your case when you had to move
Yeah.
location that's pretty extreme. All right, well, your journey to wholeness now goes, and then what led you to tell us a little bit about that journey to wholeness. How long did it take? Because I get that question often, when will I be okay? And then what led you to serving others?
Yeah. I dove in headfirst to my work around this relationship. Part of the abuse that was happening was him unveiling things that had happened in the relationship that on some level I knew there was betrayal. I knew there was other women, but didn't like no. So afterwards he was sending me photos of him with other women while we had been together and saying things like it must it must be alarming to know that you were never in control in this relationship, and just very very scary things, right? Of somebody that you had been in relationship with for 4 years, and that I had divulged everything to him, right? I went in with an open, vulnerable heart that was being used against me. And so after like breaking it off and telling him he couldn't come back, scheduled with my therapist and saw her weekly for the whole summer. It really was from spring through fall where his behavior was really scary. And then his behavior started to peter off. And it was during that time, again, where I can see now the gratitude that I have for how intense that was, because I didn't have the choice anymore to continue in the same behaviors that I was in. So, because codependency was an issue for me, when I tried to set a boundary in the past, I felt really guilty. I was like, how's he going to feel about this boundary? What's this going to do? Is he going to be upset? But when you get to the point where you have to change the locks on your house, it's a pretty big boundary. And it
Yeah.
no longer matters how he feels about it. It's protecting me. So I got these very extreme examples of what it was to take care of myself, which was really healing for me and understanding what that switch was.
Mhm.
And so working with the literal actions of changing my behavior towards him, and with my therapist doing some brain spotting around the trauma. I was actually diagnosed with PTSD before the relationship ended, actually, because of everything that I had gone through with the deception, the betrayal, and the lies that had happened in that relationship. And so I knew what it was I wanted to work on immediately. And I dove in, and it was scary and it was hard. And it was many, many nights curled up on the living room floor, just bawling. And I had to go there. I had to
Yeah.
be in that place. And I am thankful that I allowed myself to do that. In a lot of ways, it felt like I didn't have a choice, but we always have a choice, right? It was me, it was my higher self, I believe, that really helped me feel safe enough to be able to do that and know that I was going to come through on the other side.
Beautiful. Yeah. I take really great notes, whether it's support group or one-on-one clients, so that I can go back and remind them, like you said, your friend would remind you of the truth, of your experience, or what have you, to keep you on track or moving forward. And I find that with some of my people, I'm reminding them and repeating to them often
Yeah.
their truth because of the fog, and to help them stay on that path, because like you said before, it will end. This pain, this going through, we say you don't get over, but you get through, and there is, another side, as you
Yeah.
were describing so eloquently. So having that diagnosis, and I think that that's a very common diagnosis when we've been in relationship with a narcissist and codependency's been involved, and there's that origin story behind it. PTSD is quite common, and moving through that kind of work and getting to wholeness. um, I know that you've developed. What led you to serving others? I'm sorry, I did ask that. So what led you to wanting
Yeah.
to serve others after
Yes.
you found your way to wholeness and wellness?
Yeah. And to answer your question about the length of time too, for me to get to the place where I could speak about it without having the emotional charge is how I
Yeah.
knew that I was in a place to be able to start to share my story more publicly and work with people in that situation. And that took me about almost a year to get to that place. And that was with very intentional therapy and very intentional work that I was doing around all of this stuff. So I really believe there's not a specific timeline. Like some people say, half the time that you were in the relationship. I believe that it is more dependent on how willing you are to go into the feeling and integrate the feeling, because we can stay in that analyzing place of why did this happen and how could he do that and how could he not see how much he's hurting me and who is he, and we stay in this spin of trying to figure out why and how, but
Yeah.
we don't drop into the feeling. And so the
Yeah.
more that you can get in there, as painful as that might be, that in my opinion is the way through. That is the way through the experience.
I love that explanation, because I have so many people who really ruminate on the why and the how. And I try to convince them that that's something sometimes we just have to file away and put it back in the want to know, don't need to know, as we to move forward. So drop into the feeling is really going to be the expedited way, and I love that. It's time for our second break. When we come back, I know that as you started serving others and you got some certifications and some specific healing modalities, I want to talk about the three elements that you've identified that women need in their life when healing from narcissistic abuse. I believe you described it go from feeling confused and full of guilt to confident and deserving of a healthy relationship. So don't go far. When we come back, Bree's going to talk to us about those healing elements.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. Talking with Bree Wolta. And Bree, we were talking during the break, actually, and I was saying that some of my people are going to be thrilled to hear the To Q a Year. And I was commenting on, you were saying you went in with really intention on your healing. I think that's so important because people aren't always willing, ready, able to do the work, and you were. So I think it's very motivating to hear it can be done in a year, because psychologists tell us on average it's 2 years, but again, that's an average. So you're an example that you can get in there with intention and make it happen within a year. Now, what led you to want to now help others once you helped yourself?
So as I came through that dark tunnel, as I came out the other side and started to really build that self-confidence, I had always wanted to do some sort of coaching. And before this experience, I was kind of lost on what that was going to look like. And it was sort of this thing that I had a desire for, but didn't know how to actualize. And so after going through this experience, I was like, oh, I'm going to help other women do this. Duh. Like that, it made so much sense because I knew what worked. I knew what I needed that I didn't have. And I knew that I could provide a really safe space for people to open up and be honest and truthful and heal. And I had been told in different ways my whole life that people just feel like they can open up to me. People that I didn't know very well would divulge a lot of information, and they're just like, I'm sorry I said all that. Like, you just feel very safe. And it's just an energy that I have. So I knew that that was a part of my gift in this world, and to use it to help women be able to process the mind games and the confusion and make sense of what happened, while also integrating the feeling, while also being in community with other people who have been through it. That to me it is such an honor to be able to hold that space. But really going through this situation was the catalyst for, all right, I'm going to start working with women. And the business has morphed and grown since that first client, but it is just a dream every single day.
Wonderful. So tell us about these healing elements that you've identified for women.
Yes, we have touched on a few of them already. So we'll reiterate what that looks like and why they're so important. So the first element to heal truly from these relationships is clarity. And as we have talked about, this is finding the whys, finding the hows, listening to the podcast, doing educational material, analyzing the situation, using your analytical mind. to make
Yeah.
sense of something. It's important to honor this part of us because as humans, we need understanding around things that happen, right? We're meaning-making machines. And so to give ourselves some amount of information around narcissism or around boundaries or around codependency or whatever it is that we're learning is an important piece to this puzzle.
Yeah.
The problem is where we get stuck on that piece. So we just keep consuming material. We just keep going down the rabbit holes of the narcissism videos on YouTube. And we just are like overly consuming. We're not even integrating or understanding the information anymore. It's just like more and more and more and more. And I know in my case, I thought that if I could understand narcissism and I could understand why narcissists betray their partners, that I would heal from that experience because I understood it. And that's not the case. Understanding betrayal is much different than feeling betrayed and moving through the experience, the felt experience of what that was like to be betrayed in a relationship.
Yeah.
So the second element then is feeling. And we need a safe way to be able to feel feelings that are hard to feel.
Mhm.
A lot of us haven't been taught how to sit with anger, how to sit with sadness, and not go straight to feeling guilty or straight to justifying or straight to figuring out the why of why we're feeling the way we're feeling, just simply being in the feeling.
Right.
And so we need a skill to be able to do that. Otherwise, we're just clinging to the analyzing to make us feel safe.
Yeah.
One of my favorite metaphors for this is if you think about being in the middle of the ocean and the ocean being these feelings that are overwhelming. You're holding on to this buoy, and I call it the analytical buoy, and it's keeping you above water barely. You're getting little gasps of air, and you're just trying to hold on to why and how. When really what we need is a safe tool to give us the oxygen so that we can go underneath the feeling, be in the feeling, and then process through the feeling. So for me in my practice, that oxygen mask is EFT tapping, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And this is a nervous system regulation tool that we use while we're processing something that's distressing. And what happens when we can regulate the system while we're feeling a hard emotion is that we're able to sit with that emotion and move it through the stress response cycle. So instead of starting to feel anger and then pushing it away or distracting with Netflix or pretending like it's not really that big of a deal, I can sit with it. I can say, I'm so angry that this happened, and move through that anger in a way that my body feels safe to be able to do so.
Love that.
Yes.
I'm asking more about EFT in a minute, but what's the third element? The healing
Yes. So we have clarity, we have feeling. The third element is connection. So specifically, if you can find connection with other women who have been through it, that's like the cherry on top of the cake. But connection with people in general, again, who can hold that safe space is really, really, really important because of the isolation and the mind games that we have been in. So to have that person that can reflect back and say, of course you miss him. You spent 4 years with him and he's doing these things. And this is the reality that's happening right now. Right.
Yeah.
Or to have that woman be like, oh, he said the same thing to you as my partner said to me. Maybe that's a manipulation tactic. This is a different way that I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
So in the way that I work with women, part of the program is a group component where they get to converse in live group sessions. They get to converse in our private platform of just me too. Oh my gosh, me too. Or validating like, I've been there. I'm a couple steps ahead of you, but I know exactly what that feels like. And that is so validating when your feelings have been invalidated.
For so long and denied, and especially when you've denied them yourself. I love the imagery of holding onto the buoy and then putting on the going going under and being with the feeling. I can relate to all of that. And then coming up and being in group connection. That's amazing. So let's take a few more minutes with EFT if we can. I've seen EFT. I've done EFT. Um, I had a friend who's an EFT practitioner, and she taught me, and I've used it on myself. And I've seen it used for overcoming fears and for stress relief, worry, anxiety. So, how might EFT be used to face the fear of letting go of
Mhm.
relationship? Can you give me what someone might say as they do, or maybe show us for those who are actually viewing the podcast? I know some are just listening, but what could you tell us? Maybe they're fearing being alone or fearing loneliness or being unloved or unwanted.
Yes, that's beautiful. So EFT, how we use EFT tapping is we tap on specific points in a consecutive motion. So that sequence will help to regulate the nervous system just from a pure somatic state. While we're tapping on the points, then we're naming the thing that feels hard to be with. So we're naming the fear.
Okay.
So let's say that I have a fear of leaving because if I leave, I'm going to be alone forever. Okay. So we would start by acknowledging I have fear. I have a fear that I'm going to be alone forever. And when I think about this fear, I feel a pit in my stomach.
Okay.
Right? You want to identify what happens in your body when you feel this overwhelming emotion.
Okay.
So you identify the fear, you identify the pit in your stomach, and then you move through the points. So we can do that together. I'll cue it audibly also. So for the people listening, they can follow along with when we're moving points.
Okay.
We start with the side of the hand, which is you use your other hand to tap right below your pinky. It's called the karate chop point for obvious reasons. And we stay here as we repeat what's called a setup statement 3 times. All the setup statement is just naming what we're feeling and naming where we're feeling it.
Okay.
So even though I'm feeling this fear in the pit of my stomach, I know that I'm safe to be with this feeling. Even though I'm feeling this fear of being alone forever, and I feel it in the pit of my stomach, I know that I'm safe to be with this feeling. Even though I'm feeling this fear and this pit in my stomach, I know that I'm safe to be with this feeling. And then we come up to the eyebrow. This is right where your hair starts. And we just repeat, I'm feeling fear. And we come to the side of the eye, right behind your temple. I fear I'm going to be alone forever. Under the eye, pretty close up to your eyeball. I feel this fear in the pit of my stomach. Coming down under the nose. There's so much fear here. Chin. I'm too scared to be alone, too scared to leave. Collarbones. This is right underneath your collarbones. I feel this fear in the pit of my stomach. And then under the arm. For women, this is right in line with your bra line. For men, this is right in line with your nipple. I feel too afraid to leave. I feel I'm going to be alone forever. And then top of the head. All of this fear in the pit of my stomach. And then you'll bring your hand to your chest. You'll just take a moment, close your eyes, and tune in to see how you feel. Did that fear go up or down? Did that sensation in your stomach, did it move? Maybe now you feel it in your throat, right? So then you go through another round, naming that it's in your throat. And the purpose here is to bring space to what we're feeling long enough for that energy to shift. So sometimes we feel that in just a couple rounds. Sometimes when we start to tap, the feeling actually escalates to a point where we can actually emote. We do cry or we do scream or we do let out that emotion in some other way. And then it starts to come back down. But we just want to be with the feeling long enough to find some curiosity about it and to allow it to change.
Yeah. Wow. So name the fear, identify the feeling in the body, and then go through the different points, the meridian point for tapping. Okay. Thank you for demonstrating and talking us through EFT. And again, EFT stands for
Emotional freedom techniques.
wonderful.
And even
And
if you forget
yeah,
everything that you're
uh,
supposed to say, just tapping on the points alone while you're feeling something is doing the work on your body to then bring your mind back online to help kind of analyze or find curiosity around that situation.
okay, wonderful. And you're also a certified clearing work practitioner. Tell us what that is.
Yeah. The clearing work is a method that was coined by my EFT teacher's mother, actually. And she trademarked this method because it is so transformational in helping to remove subconscious blocks. So it is a version of tapping. We're using different points in that type of session. And before the session, I'm using intuitive kinesiology or muscle testing to test energy blocks on behalf of my client. So I can move through the different chakras and find the blocks that are in that client's highest and best that day to clear. And then we find 8 of those blocks and we move through a specific tapping sequence to help clear those blocks. So it's a little bit more of a energy work feeling session versus a processing session because it's a call and response experience where I'll say something and then they'll repeat it back to me while they're tapping. And
Yeah,
that process, the tapping and the repeating, helps them to move that energy.
interesting. Okay. I was not familiar with that until I saw it in your bio. So in what ways have you found that helping others continues to help yourself?
Mm. Oh my gosh. In every single client thus far, there has been some piece of the story that I'm like, me too. Some of
Oh,
them are almost exactly parallel. Some of them are less parallel, but there are moments where our stories intertwine and I can see myself in them. They can see themselves in me.
mhm.
And being able to watch and guide women in the way that I needed is so healing for me because I know that I am helping somebody else do it differently and potentially more quickly than even I did it. And
Yeah,
so it's such an honor when somebody trusts you with such a raw piece of themselves.
yeah,
There's nothing like a session where a client will say, I can't believe I just told you that. I've never told anybody that before.
yeah, yeah. I get that. I've had that happen before as well. Well, Bree, I know someone listening today has heard their truth in your story for sure, and is taking away some practical tools for their healing. And if you had a key takeaway for the audience today, what would it be?
Have compassion for yourself, especially as you're in the very beginning stages and trying to figure out what was real, what wasn't real, if you had been deceived, if you'd been betrayed, if you're still in that seeking place of information, having compassion that trying to make sense of the nonsensical is a really hard thing to do. And trusting that when you're ready, you're going to move into that safe place where you can start integrating the feeling. And that's where the deeper healing is going to come. But we can't judge ourselves into healing. So the more you can meet yourself with compassion, with patience, the more that you're going to move forward in your journey without adding more stress and more judgment and more criticism than stuff you're already trying to unpack.
Right, right. Beautifully said. I know judgment held me back quite a bit. Um, but know that you may feel alone, but you're not alone. There are people who understand, and Bree and I are two of those people. So let's share how the audience can connect with you. You want to share your website and your podcast that you have and other information with everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. My website is brewolta.com, and that's BREWOLTA. And my podcast is Heartbreak to Wholeness. And I'm going to send you a specific episode that I think will resonate with your audience. Um, It's called Finding Self-Love and Trust in Yourself, again, after heartbreak. And it talks about EFT tapping and using this nervous system regulation tool. So there's more examples, there's more description around what that is, so that you can add that to your toolkit.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think you had a gift for the audience too.
Yes.
There's a link that'll be in the show notes, but tell them about that, please.
Yes, I have a self-guided course called Find Yourself Again. And this course is intended for you when you are fresh out of that relationship and you're not sure who you are anymore. You don't know your values, you don't know what you need, you don't know what you want, and you don't know where to start to figure all of that out. So for podcast listeners, I offer 10% off of that self-guided course. It's under $100, very affordable. The code is podcast10, and we'll be sure to get those links in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Bree, I just really, once again, I just want to hug you through the screen. Thank you for being here today. I know we could just talk more, and no doubt that we will. But unfortunately, it's time for us to say goodbye today.
More to
come. So as this episode of Soul CPR comes to a close, I have to send a shout out to my brother from school, Wade. He was watching today. Remember that healing is not a linear journey, but it is a process of profound transformation. And if today's stories resonated with you, then please share this podcast with someone who may need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can always connect with me on social media as well. On Facebook, it is at Skyview Coaching, and on all the other platforms, it is at Ann Papiotti. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics that you would like to explore in future episodes. I was giving an idea last night, and I will work on that for next week. Chrissy Walker, I'll be working on it. So until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papiotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.